The besiegers were panic-stricken at this unexpected spectacle, and the Karamanian prince, thinking possibly that Sultan Mahmud with an army was close at hand, or perhaps seized with remorse and ghostly terror at the sepulchral operation, fled from Brusa unchecked by the bitter reproach of one of his own followers, who said to him, "If thou fleest before the dead Ottoman, how wilt you stand against the living one?" The Sultan, when he had crossed over from Europe to Asia with his forces, marched first against his rebellious vassal. He besieged Smyrna and compelled it to surrender, and Junayd was soon reduced to beg for mercy, which Muhammad, moved by the tears of the fallen rebel's family, accorded him. He then marched against the Karamanians. He captured many towns in person, but was obliged to his army by a sudden and severe malady, which baffled the skill of his physicians save one, the celebrated Sinan, who prescribed the news of a victory as the best medicine that the Sultan could receive. His favorite general, Bayezid Pasha, soon replied the desired remedy by completely defeating the Karamanians and taking their prince Mustafa Beg prisoner. Muhammad recovered his heels at the joyous intelligence at his success. The Karamanians now sued for peace, which the Ottoman Sultan generously granted. The captive Karamanian prince, in Muhammad's presence, placed his right hand with the rope on his own bosom, and solemnly pronounced the oath: "I swear that so long as there is breath in the body, I will never attack or covet the Sultan's possessions." Muhammad was set him at liberty with every mark of honor, but while he was yet in the sight of the conqueror's camp, the prince who held that between the Karamanians and the Ottomans were outraged from the cradle to the grave, commenced marauding on some of the herds that were grazing on the plain round him. His officers reminded him of the oath which he had just taken, but he drew from his bosom a dead pigeon, squeezed tightly in his right hand, and sarcastically repeated the words of oath: "So long as there shall be breath in this body." Incensed at this perfidy, Muhammad renewed the war and gained great advantages, but he again was generous enough to grant peace on the retired entreaties of the Karamanians. They had received such severe blows in the last war that terror now kept them quiet for several years, and the Asiatic dominions of the Sultan enjoyed peace and tranquility, which Muhammad further secured by entering into friendly diplomatic relations with the various princes of Upper Asia, so as to avert further invasions like those of Timur. On his return to Europe in 1416, Muhammad became involved in a war with the Venetians, the petty lords of many of the islands of the Aegean Sea were nominal vassals of the Republic of Venice. But in disregard of the treaty between the power and the Sultan, they continued the capture of Turkish shipping and to plunder of Turkish coasts. Muhammad fitted out a squadron of galleys to retaliate for their injuries, and this led to an encounter with the Venetian fleet, which under their admiral Loredano completely defeated the Turks of Gallipoli. On the 29th May 1316, peace was soon restored, and Turkish ambassador appeared at Venice in the same year, with a new treaty between his master and the Republic. Muhammad's troops sustained some severe reverses in expedition undertaken against Styria and Hungary between 1416 and 1420, but no very important hostilities were waged between him and his neighbors. In European Christendom, a far more serious peril to the Sultan was a revolt of the dervishes, which broke out both in Europe and Asia, and was only quelled by the Sultan's troops after several sanguinary battles. This insurrection was organized by the judge of the army, Bedreddin, aided by an apostate Jew named Tirlak. The nominal chief of the fanatics was a Turk of low birth named Barek Ludye Mustafa, whom they proclaimed as their spiritual Lord and Father. All these three perished either in battle by the executioner, and their sect was extinguished by them. Their revolt is remarkable as being, with the exception of the Wahhabite rebellion in the last and present century, the only religious war by which the Ottoman Empire has ever been troubled. After this formidable peril had passed away, Muhammad was called on to defend his throne from another domestic enemy. It has been mentioned that one of Bayezid's sons, Prince Mustafa, who was present on the day of Angora, disappeared after the defeat of the Turks in that battle. His body was not found among the slain. So Timur caused diligent search to be made for it. Nor was the mode of this escape, if he escaped, ever ascertained. Certain it is that in 1420 a claimant of the Ottoman sovereignty appeared in Europe, who asserted that he was Mustafa, the son of Sultan Bayezid, and who was recognized as such by many of the Turks, supported by the Prince of Wallachia and by Junayd, the old rebel against Mohammed. The pretender penetrated into Thessaly with the Phrygian army. Mohammed met him with his customary wager, and a pitched battle fought near Salonika, in which the claimant was utterly defeated and fled for protection to the Greek commandant of that city. The Byzantine emperor refused to surrender the suppliant fugitive, but consented to keep him in strict custody on condition of Muhammad paying annually a large sum of money, ostensibly for the captive maintenance, but in reality as the wage for his imprisonment. There was one other son of Sultan Bayezid who figures little in history, but whose melancholy lost must not be passed over the sake of uniformly preserving the bright color in which we would gladly represented the character of Mahomet. Prince Casimir does not appear to leave fought at Angora, like his five brethren, or to have taken any part in the subsequent civil wars between them. He came into Mohammed's power, and though he was not put to death in conformity with the precedent which Bayezid had established, he was deprived of sight by his brother's order. The blinded prince received the grant of a dominion near Bursa, where he resided, and Turkish historians praise the good nature of Sultan Mohammed, who, whenever he visited his Asiatic capital, sent for his sightless brother to the palace and treated him with benevolence truly fraternal. Another stain on the memory of Mohammed the Gentleman in his guilty weakness in seeking to strengthen and sovereignty by the deed of the son of his brother Suleiman. But in this case, as in his conduct towards Prince Casimir, Mohammed recoiled from following out to its full extent the stand principle of extinguishing in the blood of those nearest to the throne all risk of their rivalry. With its occupant he spared a daughter from Suleiman, had also left, and when that daughter was married and bore a son, Mohammed conferred ample wealth on the child, so that it should be maintained in a manner worthy of its rank. Mohammed indeed showed on his deathbed that no sophistry or statecraft could blind his natural sense to the heinous guilt of fratricide. He was stricken with apoplexy near the close of the year 1421, and though he partially recovered, he knew that his end was approaching, and earnestly implored his favorite general, Beyazıt Pasha, to place his two infant sons under the protection of the Greek Empire, lest their elder brother Prince Amurad, and becoming Sultan, should imitate the crimes of his grandfather and his father, and study his own security by their destruction. Mohammed did not long survive the shock which his system had received, but his death was concealed from the public by his general and chief officers of state for more 40 days, while intelligence of the event was sent to Prince Murad, who at the time of his father's mortal illness held a command of the frontiers of Asia Minor. Muhammad I was but 47 years of age at the time of his death, and his reign as Sultan of the reunited empire had lasted only 8 years. But he had been an independent prince for nearly the whole preceding period of 11 years that passed between his father's captivity at Angora and his own final victory over his brother Musa at Chamurli. For 19 years, therefore, he was a ruler over his people, and his memory is still deservedly cherished and honored among them. He was buried at Bursa in a mausoleum erected by his near the celebrated mosque which he built there, and which from its decorations of green porcelain is called Green Mosque. This edifice is said to be the most beautiful specimen of Saracenic architecture and carving that is the existence. Muhammad I also completed the vast and magnificent Mosque Bursa, which his grandfather Murad I had commenced, but which had been neglected during the reign of Bayezid. It is deserving mention that Muhammad founded in the vicinity of his own mosque and mausoleum two characteristic institutions, one a school and one a refectory for the poor, both of which he endowed with royal munificence. The region of his sultan is cited by Van Hammer as the period when a taste for literature and fondness for poetry first prevailed among the Ottomans. He was a liberal patron of intellectual merit, and the name of the early literary Turkish politician Shehiri is preserved in honorable reputation for having, while Muhammad was governor of Amasya and Sehiri, his defterdar or chancellor of the exchequer, inspired the young prince with an enduring zeal for the advancement of literature and art, and for the generous patronage of their professors.